Alright, tonight I'm making this video about death and pain, because I've been meaning to for a while, and I also recently saw, like a few hours ago I saw the death of Slobodan Prelek, who was I think he was a general in the former Yugoslavia, and he was charged with war crimes, and he just committed suicide basically in court after his verdict, the verdict for his appeal was read to him. Now, whether I'm not talking about the Yugoslav conflict, I'm not. That's a completely different discussion. But there have been many people like Branik and many others in the past. Most of them end up being on the wrong side of history, the wrong side of morality. But there have been many people who have died, whether by suicide or by themselves, by gunfire from conflict, in various conflicts, at various times throughout history. So sometimes when we don't agree with what the person was saying, the biggest insult we could say is coward to someone who lost their lives. Coward. Especially someone who lost their lives in something that's most certainly a suicide. But I think that that's very ignorant, and it kind of shows our perception of death and pain is off in a society. So I really wanted to make this video and talk about it. So there's a difference between suicide out of desperation and suicide out of fighting for a cause. If you have some kind of cause you believe in, and then the cause is over, then basically you're trying to say, well, there's no more meaning for me to live. I can't find meaning in that. So I think it's important to talk about this, because I think death is very much something that we've detached from, and so is pain becoming something we're increasingly detached from in our modern society, especially through things like movies. It's something that we don't experience. People rarely experience death nowadays in modern society, unless you're not at some war front, unless you're not somewhere in a very underdeveloped country. You don't end up seeing people dying. But people dying around you has always been just an integral part of life. Just like people are being born and you hear about people's babies all the time, people die too. And the process of death itself, I think, has been extremely censored nowadays. And it's very interesting, because the effect that it's caused is that we no longer understand, like from first-hand experience, like when you see it, what it means to die. And because you don't understand something, but it's always something that is talked about, like in movies, like, oh, the bad guy died, or something happened, or the good guy died. It's this thing that you're detached from, right? And when you detach yourself from death in such a way, you end up most of the time fearing it more. You're much more afraid to die. And I would like to posit that that's a problem. I think that you should certainly want to survive, but survival isn't a means to life. Like, survival isn't what life is about. If you notice, people in the financial classes, people who are more towards the bottom end up just trying to survive, literally, and their whole lives. while people towards the top start dealing with things like philanthropy or investment, or even maybe something evil, like they're trying to start, incite a revolution somewhere with their money. But they're trying to do other things. They're trying to find other meaning in life than just surviving. And I think it's very important to always find a meaning in life for human beings. This is part of the concept that comes up in all these videos that I'm going to make when I talk about humanity is, what's the meaning of everything? If you're just about surviving and like making your DNA survive and go on to the next generation, it can be very enslaving, and you're not a free person. I would even argue that you're not even alive, because to be alive is to have meaning. And when you have meaning, you're willing to die for something that you believe in. So I'm not saying that you guys should go out and like, oh, I don't like McDonald's, I'm willing to die rather than let McDonald's open another store. Like, I'm not saying that you should be frivolous with your life and you should waste it on things, but I am saying that death shouldn't be this thing that's looked upon as like the ultimate bad thing, because death is part of life. Like, you're gonna die eventually, everyone's gonna die. So you might as well like just do something. Don't be afraid so much of death. And this is metaphorical, because we're also afraid of political death. We're afraid of the death of our character. We have this character that we've built up in the world, and we're so afraid that if we do something maybe sometimes that we want or that would feel right, that if other people judge us the wrong way, that they can eviscerate our character and completely destroy who we are. Like, for instance, me making these videos, I had to overcome a lot of like, should I do this? Even though it's just philosophy, and even though it's just like literally yapping, maybe someone's gonna end up stumbling on these videos and they're gonna say, I'm not gonna hire that guy because I think he's gonna spread this baloney in the workplace and he's gonna incite random people. Or someone's gonna look at my videos and they're gonna say, I don't understand what this guy's saying, but I think he's against so-and-so. And he's going to say, in our workplace, we're not against so-and-so, so I can't hire that person. So I think that these things might negatively impact me. But then after that, I was like, if I let that get to me and I don't do these because I feel like doing these, then I'm no different than people who are afraid to do anything but survive. So it's important to be able to risk for death, and death abstractly for things like ego, but also death in a very minor version of death is pain, because pain is something unpleasant, uncomfortable. And I think in our society we've been taught that pain is something really bad, and you should avoid pain as much as possible. Like, we have this thing where like if a kid experiences pain, if children it's like the worst thing in the world, and everyone's like, isn't it the worst thing as a parent when your kid experiences pain? And yeah, it is the worst thing, and you want to help it out and help it not experience pain. But actually, it's not the worst thing in the world. There's much worse things, like your kid not living up to its full potential, your kid living a stagnant life, your kid ending up, falling into a bad way of living where they harm others. That's a much worse situation than you can have than the kid to be in pain. So, and I think that that's something that's very kind of skewed, and people don't acknowledge enough that pain is necessary for life. Pain is necessary for learning. It feels great when you're playing a sport and you get bumped and you feel some pain. It's part of the sport, it's part of the learning experience. You learn how to avoid that next time. It makes you a better player. If you're trying to learn how to ride a bike, every time you fall, you get better afterwards. I know from first-hand experience that's how I learned how to ride skis. Every time I fell, I felt so miserable, and there was snow everywhere and like in my pants, and then you can't get it out. And I'm like, I just don't want to fall anymore. And then I stopped falling. But without that, if you strip that away and if you make a process, for instance, that teaches skiing without any pain, it's nice, but it's not, even if the kid becomes a good skier, he won't be as good as someone who learns also how to learn from pain and manage their lives through pain. And what we end up doing, the big thing, that what we end up doing when we abstract death away, all are afraid of death because it's this thing that no one ever even sees anymore, and it's like, oh, I wouldn't want to die. We do everything possible to not have pain. By the way, that's a great selling thing for hospitals. Like, do you feel pain? Here, take some more painkillers, take some more of this, or here's a precaution. There's so much money being made in pain avoidance, and all these doctors are like, you're going to be in a lot of pain, so you're going to take this. And when you get told that, you're like, yeah, okay, I will. But many times you don't have to take that, or you can take a much lower dose of whatever you're getting, or if you have any kind of support, like if you break your leg and you have crutches, you can use the crutches for like 2 years after, or you can use the crutches for right up until you can start putting pressure on the leg, and then you can start like kind of limping around, and maybe you can recover faster that way. So a lot of times the pain elimination techniques are completely not necessary. But the fact that we eliminate pain in every avenue, we try to limit pain in our kids, we do everything to limit pain in our kids. Imagine if parents did everything, put so much effort into teaching their kids math, or teaching their kids about history, or how to be a better person. Imagine if they took the time to understand the things that they teach them, rather than just going and meeting with other parents and then just doing what everyone else does and what's acceptable in society. Rather than doing your own research, when you read news, all of that stuff, if we put the amount of effort we put into avoiding pain into other things, you would get so much more things done. And on top of that, you would have this amazing tool that you're born with, which is pain, and dealing with pain and processing pain. Pain can be the most profound thing, and it can lead to amazing happiness. It can lead to amazing skill when you're capable of learning from it. And much more than that, it prevents you from being a hypocrite, because sometimes you believe in certain ideas, but you end up acting hypocritical, not even noticing it sometimes, because you think you have no other way. You can basically be a weakling in terms of your own beliefs and never champion your own causes because you can't deal with pain, and because pain has never been a part of your life and everyone's been teaching you how to avoid it. You also avoid sacrifice. Pain is the #1 teacher of sacrifice. And if you can't sacrifice, why do you even care about news? Why do you even consider yourself like someone on the left or someone on the right? Why do you even care about anything in world events, right? Because if you actually did, that means that you would actually try to do things about it. My example that I keep going back to in terms of hypocrisy is global warming. Almost everyone I know is like, oh, global warming is so real, it's such a problem, it's so crazy how these politicians mess with us, and like, oh, look at the current president, he doesn't believe in global warming, that's ridiculous, and they get so bent out of shape about it. And then they like drive an SUV to work. Like, dude, don't drive an SUV, and as a matter of fact, don't drive at all. You're in your late 20s, fully capable person, get a freaking bicycle and ride to work. You live way too far away, you need to get on the highway, move closer. Find an apartment. We don't live in freaking like Beijing or somewhere. There's always available places. It's not that densely populated, so find a place. Okay, I just realized it's boneheaded to say because there's probably places there too. But find a place, move closer. Oh, but my rent's gonna be higher. Okay, that's a sacrifice. Yeah, you're not gonna afford maybe 2 loot boxes in your friggin' video game that you play, or you're not gonna afford some other stuff, going out to a restaurant, and rather than going out to a restaurant like 5 times a month, you'll go out to a restaurant 2 times a month. Big deal. Maybe you'll eat a little bit less meat because meat's expensive, and you'll eat more veggies. but you'll offset the rent, you can twist your budget around, it's fine. You believe in global warming, right? You want to be part of the solution, right? Rather than always being offended at what everyone else is doing, do something about it. But you can't, because you're not taught about pain and about sacrifice. And the idea of causing yourself pain for something is just mind-blowing. You just can't even imagine that that's something that you can do. And that's exactly where the New World Order wants you. Because when you can't act because you're afraid of pain, because you're afraid of death, then you can't stand up to anything. And even though, despite all of the noise and the bullshit between left and right, between different religions, between atheism and between all this stuff, all the warring points of view, there's one big truth. You look at the world and you see the shape. You look at your surrounding society and you see the shape that it's in. And you say, I don't like A, B, and C about it. You don't need any news to see that. You have to be blind not to see that. And when you don't like A, B, and C about it, you can do something about it. And you can do something about it without harming anyone, without breaking any laws, without being a radical. But what does that usually entail? It entails sacrifice. And when you can't sacrifice anything because you live in a society of pain medication that treats pain as like the worst thing of all, where in movies villains end up just causing some physical pain and you're like, oh my God, that guy's so evil. Then you can't do anything to change it. Even if you're woke, even if you understand that certain things aren't the way they should be, you're powerless. And all you're gonna do is live for survival. But then you know what? Your offspring, all they're gonna do is live for survival, and so on. And you guys are just gonna be exactly the same as those cows in those freaking cages that are chained to a fence and milked. See ya.